the more that I work with brands on anti-counterfeit and brand protection, the more I realize how much money and how much of a good life these counterfeiters have. And I was kind of like, maybe I chose the wrong side of the coin. So.
All right, so today we got Cameron Worth. We're going to talk about the Internet of Things, connected packaging, and how to design packaging to connect it. And like, what does it all mean? So Cam, how's it going, man?
Well, good. Thank you.
So tell us really quick, what do you guys do and how does it benefit the packaging industry?
So from an experience perspective, we started the first IoT agency about 10 years ago, which was a combination of creative and consulting support for global brand owners who wanted to activate their products as media. Well, maybe they didn't even want to activate their products as media back then, but we kind of told them it was a good idea. About 2020, so 5 years into our journey, we working with a bunch of really big global brand owners, saw the opportunity wasn't just in the kind of experience that the products were delivering, but actually it was in the data that they were collecting, and now you could use that across the business. So we had SharpEnd as our agency, and then we built IO.TT, which is the name of our IoT platform. So IO.TT, a bit different to SharpEnd because it scales and there's less problems, is the kind of the global standard for enterprise brands that want to scale connected products. So if you're generating billions of QR codes and millions of NFC tags and RFID for traceability, you're generally using IO.TT to be able to manage all of those products in the cloud. So it's in 130 countries now, managing billions of products on a monthly basis. Recently just took a pretty significant investment from Fedrigoni Bain Capital to kind of help further scale it. So.
Let's dumb this down for me.
Homer, you're dumb as a mule and twice as ugly.
When you're talking about activating product as media, what does that mean? What does that look like?
So I kind of cast my mind back 10 years ago when I first started to speak to the packaging community. We kind of sandwiched myself in between a compliance manager at a food business and then someone who was showcasing a new form of packaging for lamb mince or something weird, so there wasn't really a comfortable place for like an advertising guy coming in being like, hey man, like packaging is going to be a critical part of your marketing mix from a digital perspective. But really what we were saying is if you look to the future and you say, okay, well, QR codes are around. They weren't kind of mainstream at that point, but they were definitely about. NFC was starting to kind of rear its head. And we were saying, well, imagine if you could put those technologies into your products to make those products interactive. So what if consumers could actually be able to get things from physical objects by using their smartphone, right? So smartphones were obviously, the big thing at that point. People had gone past mobile apps into kind of more browser-based solutions. And you'd kind of seen the IoT being Internet of Things focused in the wrong places, right? So everyone was talking about fridges that were going to reorder your milk and cat collars that would let you into the right household with RFID, just all these kind of weird solutions that didn't really sound plausible. But actually, if you go to a brand, so our first client was Absolute Vodka. And I remember going to the business acceleration director and saying, hey, Vincent, you make 125 million bottles a year. Imagine if you put these codes on your bottles, you'd be able to have direct communication with all of your end consumers, right? So that in itself was an attractive proposition for the brands, set against the backdrop of retailer kind of disintermediation. So the retailer standing between you and your consumer, and connected packaging taking you directly into communication. So that's really packaging as product as media, right? Which is using your product to create direct digital connection with consumers globally.
That kind of explains how connected packaging can help you differ from traditional media, from traditional packaging, right? Where your packaging stands on shelf and it competes on looks alone. This has a little bit more of a emotional engagement, just even a physical engagement with that consumer. Everybody's concerned about sustainability today. What if I told you can take your pouches, labels, your single-serve wrappers, and make them completely dissolve, make them completely disappear in water? That's what the team at SmartSolve has done. They've got a paper that is certified flushable. You can actually take the packaging, put it in the sink, put it in the shower, put it in the toilet, flush it. It dissolves completely into fibers. Learn more about SmartSolve. Go to smartsolve.com and ask for samples. Now, let's get back to the show. Beyond scanning with my phone, having that interaction, there's a lot of other practical applications to connected packaging beyond like what I see on the shelf. So like, what are some of those examples? Like, how else can a brand benefit from this?
So if we take connected packaging out of the conversation for a second, because we think of that just as kind of one touch point for the IoT as a broad spectrum of use cases. We think about building brands, and this is about as intelligent as I ever sound. And it's a sentence that I've peddled for far too long without coming up with anything new, is you build brands in a connected world through service and experience design. So becoming more useful, becoming more relevant and interesting and fun, basically. And whether it's, activating a point of sale and being able to, for example, choose, if I think about case studies versus just kind of theoretical use cases, someone like Walgreens Boots Alliance, who they've rolled out connected products across their portfolio, they also use the interaction in retail to be able to help people to find the right device for them. So do you have back pain? Is it blood pressure? Are you stopping smoking? And then it directs you to the right product in store. So that's kind of one of the opportunities, kind of looking further up the funnel. The second one is obviously connected packaging, which is turning products into media at scale. You've then got the building brands post-purchase, which can happen at the home. So you've got smart devices like Amazon Alexa and all that kind of stuff. Then there's also the point for kind of media convergence, right? So being able to interact with print advertising. If you go on YouTube now, when you're watching an ad, you'll see that a QR code takes over the screen for about 5 seconds and allows you to bridge the ad that you're watching on YouTube with your smartphone to get the content or the service. So really it's about the sort of what we call the connected consumer journey. So if you think about it in the context of like a tea, so you've got the connected consumer journey here, and then you've got connected packaging, which is just like a deep dive into a very hairy topic, right? So connected packaging relies on designers, suppliers, converters, technology platforms, and the actual kind of internal teams to all come together, because it's actually a very, very complex supply chain, and bringing those all together to make something connected is pretty difficult. So that's kind of why we think more about the deep dive into connected packaging. Yeah.
What's the black hat application for IoT, right? So for connected packaging?
From a connected devices, so IoT is more than just triggers on packaging. Yeah. It's sensors, it's screens, there was 4 principles for IoT. It was like automation, actualization, control, and something like that. Sorry, that's my suicidal dog again. I remember very clearly there was a study done by, we'll call them a large CPG in India, and they did a behavior change experiment or trial where they were testing how much people were picking up their hand soap. And there was a bar of soap. And as it got to the core of the soap, it started to reveal like a sensor which looked like active electronics. So there was a Times of India article basically asking the question of why CPG brands are now monitoring you in your home with like cameras and tracking devices and all kinds of stuff like that. So they had to come out and be like, hey, no, it was an experiment. It was only done with a limited amount of soap bars. We had all the consent and stuff. So that was probably as far as I got into nefarious use cases for the IoT. I've always wondered if my actual calling in life was to be a counterfeiter, because the more that I work with brands on anti-counterfeit and brand protection, the more I realize how much money and how much of a good life these counterfeiters have. And I was kind of like, maybe I chose the wrong side of the coin. So maybe another version of reality. You were asking me what are the more positive use cases for IoT. One of the world's best counterfeiters.
Yeah. So all right. So then taking that soap example, right? Being able to see how many people are picking it up, that's one application, right? And their goal is data collection, right? Yeah. They've got a question. This is a means to the answer. So if we look at it from a beer perspective, right? Like you can see what temperature people's refrigerators are at. You could see how frequently they pull a beer. How often are they drinking?
So we work a lot with Molson Coors, and Coors Light creative platform is Keep Summer Fresh, and we developed QR codes that scan at certain temperatures so that the bottle has to be at a certain temperature to be interacted with. Then there was like promotions that you could get directly from the product itself. Massively high engagement rates, huge conversion rates. There's also ways of not just using these on the packaging, but also using them around the product as well. So how can you partner with bars and clubs to be able to offer things in those premises that's going to drive preference towards those brands. So we think about two ways that you use connected experiences. The first one is consumer outcomes, which is helping your consumers get more from the product and more from the brand in return for more data and more insights that you can then apply to the wider business. And the second one is customer outcomes. So can you be, if you're a PepsiCo or a Molson Coors or any brand that wants to win with retailers, can you design new experiences and new solutions that you can deploy in their stores or their environments that's then going to drive preference for them to stock your brands? And I remember in the early days of SharpEnd, we would get better shelf space just because we had an interactive experience on or around the product. So a retailer would be like, wow, this is amazing. We're going to give you end of aisle. We're going to put gondolas there and drive that. So there was actually a sales outcome just for doing cool innovations at that point as well.
If I'm just starting, right, I've got a product, I've got a pack, this thing here. I want to incorporate some of this tracking. With the soap, it was a physical piece of electronics.
Yeah.
How could I, as a creative, think about applying this into a design, whether it's a can, a bottle, a box? Am I thinking about electronics and batteries and all these other components, or how simple is it really?
I think you should ask yourself, so the creative starting point for us is, how do we heighten the enjoyment in the context of use? That's always where we start, right? And then we don't start from a technology perspective. We start from an experience-led perspective, which is, how do you design a better experience for the consumer? The second one is then, how do you enable that experience? What technology choices can you make? Then the third one is, how realistic are those technology choices? If you're working with a Pepsi can, you're probably not going to put active sensors because it's going to cost you maybe $2 to $3 per unit, which obviously isn't going to be taken very seriously by procurement. Yeah. So you then start to think about active elements, and then you think about passive elements, right? So passive elements, you then go into QR codes, NFC, image recognition, augmented reality, because then you can start to think about the different call to actions, the different requirements of the user, the different outcomes that you're looking to achieve. So for example, some programs can't be achieved with SKU level identities. If you want to do loyalty and reward people for buying this product multiple times, then you need to have serialized ID. So you need to think about, how do you achieve serialized outcomes? So whether it's uniquely encoded NFC tags, if it's fashion or beauty. So we've got a lot of experience working with brands like Estee Lauder companies, Balmain, Levi's on kind of NFC rollouts and stuff like that. Or is it a QR code serialized program, at which point you need digital printers that can print high speed variable codes. So there's all these kind of things, but the main thing is just always start from the experience. There is no brand that can't make the experience of their brand better than with connected packaging. Do you see what I'm saying? It always, we never get told this is a bad idea, it doesn't really make sense for my brand, because the best thing is, if you've got the product and you've got your phone, then the benefit is that that this person is no more than 5 centimeters away from your product in the first place. So then really they're either thinking about using it or they're actively using it. So those are really interesting starting points creatively that we didn't really have before. The other points to kind of note there are, we know that people visit or they bounce less from connected packaging scans and taps versus paid media. We know they spend longer on the experience. We know they come back more. And we know that they're more likely to give brands their data with opt-in to be added to things like CRM databases. So we see between 30 and 45% conversion rate from interaction to data with opt-in, because it's really not a leap of faith to imagine that if someone's taken their phone out, engaged with your product, been given a decent experience, and just been asked for an email address, that they're probably not going to give it to you, because they probably are, right? So that's another one of the key metrics. So we think about four, so going back into the creative, we think about 4 things, which are sustainability and legislation, CRM and data capture, loyalty and storytelling. Those are really the 4 buckets for connected experiences that you should be thinking about.
Because I remember the old days, right? You'd have to download an app that was specific to this particular brand in order to engage with it. And that was that was crazy friction. If finding your spec data is a wild goose chase around your office, you've got a data problem. SpecRite is the only cloud-based management specification solution that every brand needs. Because if you don't spec right, you'll spec wrong. So you would download the app, you'd scan it, you'd see it, and you're like, all right, that's cool. Then you'd remove the app. So today you can kind of do that with your phone. You get the experience. Do you get the experience right away, or does it pop up and ask you for permission? Like what happens there? Because people are so worried about data collection.
Yeah. So there's a report that we've just released on. It's called the Connected Experience Report, and we've got two versions. Volume 1 is Consumer Appetite for Connected Products, which talks a lot about data and privacy, which I'll provide to you afterwards. And then the second one is, we've just released it. We surveyed 1,000 decision makers of brands across the UK and the US about their appetite for investment in connected experiences, and data and privacy is another kind of key topic that's covered. There's actually one even greater horror story from the app download scenario that you mentioned, which is a lot of these third parties, when they first launched, they would partner with, let's say, a brand of fizzy drink that produces cans that are red, and they would work with them, and they would make sure that they collect as many people as they can onto their app, which is their owned audience at that point, where the brand's kind of licensing access, and then they would go to a brand that makes fizzy drinks that was generally blue or black, and they'd say, hey, do you know that we've got 500,000 of the fizzy drink red consumers on our platform? Why don't you work with us? Because then you can try and migrate those people over to your brand. So you had all of these kind of audience ownership conundrums where it's like, well, you've just paid a company money to build up their audience that they're now trying to sell to your direct competitor. So why don't you just go directly to your consumers, right? So that's really what we're about, which is no apps, own your audience, go directly into brand destinations and brand environments. In terms of the data and privacy piece, it's no different to a website visit. So we're not tracking the phone after it's interacted or anything like that. It's what location did they interact with the product? So everything that you would get from a standard website visit, plus a little bit more on the product side. Then you've got anonymized insights around session length, what have they clicked, all that kind of stuff. And then you've got identifiable data, like PII as it's called, which is all provided by the consumer. It's all opt-in, so they tick boxes to say they're happy for that data to be shared with the brand. It's owned by the brand, and they have terms and conditions as to what they can and can't do with that data, right? So that's kind of on the brand side. Nirvana, right? Because you're basically creating a value exchange where the consumer is giving you their data. And on our side as the platform, you need to make sure that you're compliant, secure, scalable, and reliable, right? So GDPR, CCPA compliance, SOC 2 Type 2, all of the different things that you need that make you an enterprise platform of choice, which is no easy feat, as you can imagine.
No, for sure. So if I create something and it's connected in one way or another, now not only can I tell that I made a sale, like that's pretty easy. I can see if my inventory is coming down, going up, no problem. But now I can see when they're using it.
Yeah,
I can see where they're using it, and even like the frequency. So those are some pretty key insights. What other data would be important that is collected for a designer to be able to make a shift, whether it's creative or marketing, to kind of reposition the brand for a better experience?
I think there's a couple of things even further up the chain than that, right? The first one is I've now got two canvases. I've got a physical canvas and a digital one to paint on, right? The next one is, if you're a design agency, let's say, because we don't do any design, packaging design. If you're a design agency who's traditionally got by producing structural designs and artwork files, you've now got digital revenues that could potentially come into your business by saying, hey, we want to put a code on this because we want to link it to this type of an experience. And suddenly you've now expanded your scope of services as a design partner. The next thing you've got is the ability to adapt the experience over time. So using rules, you can say, if this person has scanned twice, deliver them this piece of content, or if they've scanned 4 times, deliver them that piece. If they've scanned this product and this product, then deliver them to this destination. So you've got all of these interesting formulas to create. You've also got the opportunity to build and reward loyalty. So, we know a lot of our customers are using it to take them from one product experience to motivate them to interact with another product, which guarantees loyalty and additional purchase, which then gives them another way of kind of engaging with their consumers and driving business outcomes. The other insights you can be looking for are directly from the product. So, for example, We work with brands who do limited editions. They want to get feedback directly from their consumers. What do you think of this product? How long have you been using it for? So actually doing surveys that you can then reward. I mean, the opportunities are kind of endless. If you imagine that every physical product now has its own digital canvas, then you really start to go into all kinds of weird and wonderful places. I mean, I've ruined my experience of the physical world because everything I look at can be optimized with connected experiences, right? So we're constantly thinking about how to bring more brands onto the network to deliver more outcomes for both the business and the consumer.
Okay. So then if I'm a fashion brand, and fashion brands have retail outlets, so customer walks in, they pick a garment. There's definitely a million things that you can do with on garment printing, hang tags, that type of stuff to give you feedback on like where it was sourced, how it was made, have a interaction questions.
Yeah. But
I make that purchase. I walk out of the store. Typically, I walk out of the store with a shopping bag, and I'm just kind of thinking through. It's like if I scan this bag today, it can deliver one message to me. If I scan it tomorrow, it can deliver a different message. And I guess the brand would be able to be in control of what message is going out on any given day, right? You've got control of what happens on the back end.
100%. Yeah, and also, I mean, if you think, I was recently just at I was at a paper mill, let's say, and I was looking at a luxury brand who they're embossing on their papers, which they make across their bags, their papers, all of this thing. It's thousands of letters from their logo, right? And you wouldn't know unless you'd been told that and you were given a magnifying glass. But that's how much they care about the brand, right? And if you imagine they care that much about brand protection, imagine if you could put an NFC tag into the bag and you could interact with that tag and let people know this is a genuine product that you're interacting with. It was bought from this store. The paper comes from this mill. You can kind of do the whole storytelling piece. You can then link them towards the product passport for the garment that the bag is carrying. Like you can just go into really, really crazy directions. And that's why we've stopped looking at point solutions and we think more about the connected consumer journey now, because the connected consumer journey has to incorporate all of your media formats, right? Your store experience, in-store touch points that get you to the right garment, the garment that then tells you where it came from, the bag that tells you it's a genuine product and what store it was collected from. Do you see that? So you kind of have to almost like work backwards from the purchase, because there's so many ways that you can get spun out, kind of thinking about how do you integrate and stitch all these things together, All
right, let's take a quick second to talk about idpdirect.com. Go right to that website, download the design guides, the sustainability guides, the recyclable icon guide, which basically lists out all the different icons. It gives them to you in vectors. You can drop them right into your artwork right now, today, and go right into production. All right, back to the pod. Yeah, well, that's just it. It's like there's endless possibilities. Like, well, shit, where do I start?
Yeah, well, the best place to start is with the product itself. Then the further away you go from the product, the more the experience has to be driving them further along that journey towards the product. And that's kind of generally our way of working.
Okay. So then as a creative, we talked about like the starting point, inexpensive, not spending, a ton of money on actual hardware. So QR codes, that type of thing. When we get into like the NFC, what am I actually doing? How's that work? Can we do like a quick explanation of how that connects to my phone?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing to mention is that every single person listening to this podcast, and also every person who isn't listening to this podcast who has a smartphone, probably has NFC already built into their device, because it's the same technology that you use to make payments, right? Mm-hmm. The same technology can now be used to pull things and pull content from physical objects by using what's called an NFC tag. NFC stands for near field communication. It's born out of RFID, which is the stuff that stops you nicking shit from expensive shops, or at least tries to. And the technology is designed to work within about 5 to 10 centimeters of distance. The way that the tag works and the way the tag looks is it's got an antenna. Generally, they're round or square or rectangular. There's got an antenna. It's got a small chip which carries generally a URL. And then there's hidden kind of chips inside it that have things like unique identifiers for the NFC tag that allow you to do stuff like authentication. You don't need an app. You just have to go within 5 centimeters of the tag. You'll generally get a notification. The notification will then take you to the browser, and then you'll be able to take the experience. NFC is great for authentication and a kind of a higher end consumer experience. Creatives like NFC because it's discreet, you can't see it, but you do need to make awareness of the fact that the product is NFC enabled and where the tag is.
Okay.
So we think there's a fork in the road coming, which is now that everyone's aware of QR codes, we think that the kind of the luxury and higher end brands are going to kind of back NFC. It kind of with more force, and then the mass market consumer goods are going to carry on scaling with QR codes just because the cost per unit is much more favorable. So,
wow. Okay. So, no, I like that, because it makes perfect sense. I see QR codes on fizzy drinks that are red. I see QR codes on just commodities.
Yeah.
So, as a luxury brand, I don't necessarily want to muck up my design with this checkerboard. But being able to have a better experience, and it's invisible, which is kind of the whole point of luxury, is just that simplicity. There's a handful of brands out there, some fashion brands that already use a lot of this kind of service, where it's the RFID, the NFC. When you walk into the store, they already know who you are. Like, it's already built into their garments. So if you're wearing their garment when you walk in, they're like, "Oh, hi, Mr. Worth." They already know who you are. You're a high dollar spender. They kind of track you.
Yeah.
And you feel special walking into the store, like, oh my God, these guys know my name. They know my purchase history, but it's just all data.
Yeah. Either that or you feel like you're about to get ripped off.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
Yeah, if I go into a luxury store and they name check me, then I'm probably walking straight out with my But I think the NFC one's interesting just because the cost can be absorbed by luxury brands. I mean, we've got examples also of working with beauty brands. We just rolled out millions of Clinique jars with NFC tags embedded into the label. Through that, in 35 markets, you're able to access a personalized skincare recommendation based on humidity, time of day, and pollution level. So really going deep into the personalized experience using the rules engine, had a great outcome. But again, in terms of changing the way that you build brands, moisturizer is a bit like razor blades, right? Moisturizer just seems to get wetter every year, and razor blades seem to be getting sharper. I think for us, what we were able to do with Clinique was really change the way that they're communicating about their brand value, and it was around the service that the product's delivering rather than just about the product benefits, which are vast as well, because it's an amazing product. So really, I think what we're here to do as an agitator is kind of change the brain chemistry and have as many conversations with industry as possible. Hopefully, people take the disciplines and turn them into their own, and we have loads more people coming into the space because we can't work with every brand. We're starting to see more people bringing their own take on the space, and that's really exciting as well.
So how does IoT in packaging align with sustainability goals? What are some of the challenges and benefits around smart packaging?
There's probably 4 areas, and this is that point in time when I regret not getting the questions in advance, but I never do as a general rule, but this one I could have done a much more fluent answer. The first one is around the traceability of the product and being able to trace the product through the supply chain, but not just the product, the materials that constitute the product itself. So product passports is what every fucking LinkedIn blog is talking about right now. And I think everyone's already got fatigue, and it's not even coming into force for another 3 years. So God help us. That's kind of one area which is helping to comply with legislation. The second one is around nutritional guides and being able to use the product to be able to communicate things like allergens, sugar content, fat content, all that kind of stuff, which is a big trend, especially in North America. You've got the Smart Label, which it does a singular job well, which is put bits of information in a table and they can get it. The third one is the recycling of a product, being able to communicate how you responsibly dispose of a product. So we did a project with Unilever a couple of years ago called Salt Scanner, where in England, this wonderful island that I exist on, you can't advertise recycling nationally because every single agency has its own recycling capabilities. So what we were able to do using connected packaging was be able to directly communicate to the consumer and say, hey, this is a jar of X. The lid can go in this color bin. The main bottle can go in this color bin and is going to be collected on Tuesday. By the way, did you know that recycling this product powers the local secondary school's light bulb for 15 minutes? So kind of doing those behavior change tactics called nudge. The next part is resale. Mm-hmm. So bringing products into the resale market directly from one tap or one click away. So I have a garment. So my ideal journey, I'm just going to get a Balmain jacket. So like, for example, this is a pretty expensive Balmain jacket, right?
Yeah.
And, if you tap it there, then you'll get the NFC experience. With that experience, if I'm spending that much on a jacket, I'm going to want to know that it's authentic. I'm going to want to know its story. I'm going to want to understand why Balmain and Pokemon collaborated in the first place. So this was a part of the Pokemon collab. If you remember, they did the Balmain and Pokemon collab. So every single one of these has a NFC tag integrated into it.
Wow.
And it tells a different story of the different characters, right? So bringing Pokemon Go into the physical world. I'm going to want to know it's authentic. I'm going to know the story behind the collab. I'm going to want to be able to access cool content like you can from the Pokemon characters. And fourthly, if I want to put it into resale, I'm going to want to be able to do that with an authentic, like kind of almost like a pre-authentication, right? So those are kind of four nice pillars of a connected experience that tie into the overarching goal of sustainability. So traceability. The second one was nutritional information and transparency. The third one was recycling, and the fourth was resale. And all of those can be done through connected products and IoT.
Yeah, no, that reminds me of I know Alexander McQueen did a program with all their T-shirts. I think might have been the MCQ brand, where everything was RFID, tagged. Had the NFC in the labels. And then you kind of scan it. It tells you a little story about where the product was and authenticates it.
Yeah.
And authentication is critical because there are so many counterfeiters out there, and knowing that you're paying for the right product is important.
But also just knowing if you're paying that much for something, you're probably going to want as many extras as humanly possible. So.
Yeah, for sure. You need a better experience.
Yeah.
We've talked about cost a little bit. So like, what are some of these different costs, right? QR codes, the stuff that you print is free essentially. Then what's the next step up? And then, what goes up above that?
So I would probably think about, and this is probably where I talk against the interest of my own business, which is known to happen quite frequently, but QR codes are, like you said, they're a printed technique, right? So all you need to think about is the platform that's going to be managing the QR code, posting the experience or redirecting to the right place. The second one is augmented reality, which is using AR/image recognition, which basically takes this is a lens wipe, but it would take the assets to be able to deliver an experience. The cost of third-party AR engines has gone like triple in the last 12 months because brands have been looking for a solution that isn't quite QR code, but uses the existing assets without them needing to change the artwork. So all of the costs have kind of skyrocketed. It's worth being cautious of AR from that perspective, web-based AR, because it's not just about the content, it's about the engine that powers the content, and those costs have gone mental. And then you've got the NFC kind of integration, which is pretty much, we operate on a rule of thumb that an NFC tag based on standard specification costs between 10 and 15 euro cents per tag based on order volumes under 500,000, 500,000. So it's not massively expensive to buy the tags, but the thing you have to factor in is the kind of the entire integration process of the NFC tag, right? So we sometimes see a fully loaded cost for NFC integration being anywhere from 30 to 60 euro cents per item. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
and that's just it, right? As a creative, you're like, okay, well, this will only be this much, and then you have to think every other step that's required in order to accomplish that, because it's not just putting the tag in; it's building the back end.
If I'd have known how hard it was to deliver NFC programs 10 years ago when we were doing our first rollouts, I would have probably chosen something else. But it's all I'm good at, unfortunately.
You would start counterfeiting. Right.
Yeah, that were counterfeited. But I remember having to slow down production lines on rum bottles because we needed to lock the NFC tags because the NFC tags weren't locked by the platform that provided them to us, and all this kind of stuff. But it's also, you need to make sure that if it's a garment, the NFC tag needs to be machine washable, withstand certain spin cycles, and can't be broken with the antenna, and needs to be integrated properly so it can still be readable over the fabric, doesn't get interfered by metal. There's all these different complexities that require specialists to still be in the room. But our vision is that in the next couple of years, these will be mainstream technologies that won't require kind of specialist partners, and then can be just kind of business as usual techniques for building brands through products. So,
how do you stop it from working? Like, I'm just thinking, if I've got a tag in a jacket and I put my phone in my jacket every time, is it going to go off?
There is a particular producer of handbags who had exactly that problem, which is when they went to market and they were like, hey, we've just connected all our handbags with NFC. The first thing that happened is people lost their shit, right? They were like, picking my phone. You know what I mean? That had almost like the opposite effect that they wanted to have when they launched. So again, that comes down to UX design, right? What is the user experience? Yeah, we even had a bit of an interesting one because we did the Levi's back patch. So we changed the back patch for the first time in 200 years, put NFC tags into in between the two bits of leather. But again, to tap it, you had to like do this. Mm-hmm. We were kind of learning from our own mistakes here, but it's it basically just comes down to common sense and user experience design to kind of avoid these things. If you put the NFC tag here and you put the pocket here, then it's your fault.
Yeah.
You should be held personally responsible.
Yeah. Now I remember when Levi's came out with they came out with a jacket that was right. It was woven with some kind of cabling as well, and
I remember I think it was called Jacquard or something like that. It was Jacquard, Project Jacquard or something. But yeah, that was us. I think it was woven RFID, and you could do like motion sensing and stuff like that with your hands and gestures.
Yeah. You've never heard of it ever since, but you're around this thing long enough, you start seeing you see cool things and think like, all right, how can I apply this?
I remember I was on stage. I think it was the Mobile Marketing Association, and it was just when KFC had released a chicken bucket that had a Bluetooth-enabled camera, so you could take pictures of you and your friends when you were eating chicken in their store. And I think I came up on stage and was like, this is like the worst example of IoT ever, and KFC just so happened to be in the room. So I kind of took them off my potential client list for the next decade, and I've been right.
All right, now you got to work in that KFC NFC deal.
Yeah. But it's there's been a lot of bad examples for IoT, but there's also been a lot of good examples, and looking forward to there being a lot more as the space matures and the industry scales. So,
what's your favorite example
of NFC?
Yeah, just of anything connected. Like, what's the one thing you're like, man, this is awesome. I wish I would have done it, or I'm so stoked that we did it.
For me, it was the basketball jerseys that no one engaged with and that no one produced content for because no one was interacting. But it was the thing that almost like triggered I remember when Nike about 10 or 11 years ago did the first NBA jerseys with they took the I can't remember what that's called. I think it's called an emblem or something like that, or embellishment. And they had NFC, and there were all the great pictures of like Kobe Bryant tapping his embellishment. And I was like, Nike are doing it. And then Nike kind of forced all the other brands to kind of take it more seriously. And that was still my kind of favorite example, just because it inspired me the most to kind of set up shop and do this. I was kind of looking at technology platforms, and it was when everyone was getting funding for IoT platform with a new Facebook. Physical products now have their own social media networks and all that kind of shit. And then I was basically just like, well, what's in it for the creative? Right? How do you make this more interesting and more fun? And we were swimming against the tide of funding for like 5 or 6 years. No one really wanted to touch us because we were a services business, only caring about the experience. It wasn't until COVID drove everything mainstream, and then we built the technology platform that we started to be taken more seriously. And we're here now as a proud part of the Fedrigoni family, and again, you tie it all back to the Nike example of something that no one interacted with and no one produced content for.
Yeah. So talking about Fedrigoni, right? So their recent investment in your company, like, how does this partnership kind of influence the future of connected packaging? What are the new possibilities that Fedrigoni now opens up?
I think that Fedrigoni is for me like it's a dream come true. Firstly, I remember going to LuxPack one year and seeing their stand with the white on black, and just kind of like they made their first move into RFID, and I was like, wow, I wonder if they'd ever speak to a company like SharpEnd. And then for us, it was, I've always described it as like, we've kind of always been in a canoe, like just kind of with my hand on my chin and my elbow on my knee as I'm sort of charting the course for this new form of brand experience. And suddenly now we've got this kind of warship next to us. So, there's kind of just saying, hey, we're alongside you. We like what you're doing. We're going to help you. We're going to give you access to, clients and operational infrastructure and stuff like that. So it's very much about two leaders coming together. One's a lot smaller than the other, but Fedrigoni is probably easily the reference player in luxury materials for packaging, right? So what happens when all of these paper products become connected solutions? And if you look at the relationship between paper, RFID, and experience, you can start to see how this new ecosystem is going to unlock better creative opportunities for customers, of which pretty much every big luxury brand is working with them in some way, shape or form. Yeah. So that's really, I think, where we're focusing on the partnership in terms of that luxury kind of high-end customer portfolio. But then, of course, from a SharpEnd perspective, we've still got the autonomy to work with who we want. And we're actually looking forward to working with more, let's say less mature kind of disruptor brands that want to do pretty wild stuff with connected experiences. So for us, it's just given us an amazing home with wonderful people who believe in what we're doing, and luxury brands are going to feel the benefit of paper and luxury brand materials now becoming connected solutions. So.
Okay, so then if I'm an agency, if I'm a brand and I want to work with SharpEnd and develop some type of program, what's the process?
I mean, I think I forgot, to be honest with you. I'm a creative guy trapped in a corporate box these days, so I don't even know how you work with us. But there's kind of two ways to work with us. The first one is as a consulting and a creative partner, which generally agencies don't like, but brands like it because they get to tap into 10 years worth of case studies and connected experiences. And then on the platform side, you can log in, create a demo, create some connected products, generate some QR codes, encode some NFC tags at your leisure, and just have that as an extension. We're looking to work with as many agencies and packaging partners as we can on that side of the business. We don't have any like exclusivity clauses and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. We just want more people to deliver more connected solutions. And there's even ways that you can use the platform for free because we're just really focused on scale and making sure that every physical product carries a connected experience. So okay. The website is sharpend.com or io.tt. Yeah.
Perfect. And then I'll put a QR code right here in the video so you guys can scan it and go visit SharpEnd. Right, we'll bring this full circle. Yeah. All right. So if I'm an agency and I've got a small project, I don't have to be afraid of reaching out to you because there's always ways to work together.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like I said, I mean, we have I have a bigger, and this will sound strange, but I have a bigger commitment to the industry than I do to the business, right? Because at the same time, we've had to build the industry in order to build our business inside it. So I have to have the confidence that SharpEnd and io.tt will always be the reference player. And my job is to go and get as many people working with connected experiences and digital triggers as possible, because everyone benefits, right? The rising tide lifts all boats, as they say. So
yeah, no, that's awesome, man. So Cameron, we're wrapping up here. Is there anything maybe I didn't ask you that you'd like to talk about?
No, that's fine. Thanks ever so much, and really appreciate what you do, and very cool to be on the podcast and be invited. And yeah, you have a new friend in me and SharpEnd. So anything we can do to help, let me know.